Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest, one of our Culture Matters family. Before I do that, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. I've never known any trouble that an hour's reading did not relieve. Baron de Montesquieu. Eddy Perez, welcome back.
Thank you for having me again.
Our last episode about seizing the moment, episode 140. If you're listening to this, go check out that episode. Eddy's been a regular family member here on the Culture Matters podcast. And today I want to ask you about, because I know it's 6 a.m. on a Sunday. It's true. There really aren't many people I'd want to do this with at 6 a.m. on a Sunday. But when you said let's do it at 6 a.m., I thought, this is why one of the reasons I like you, because that means that means I gotta level up. I mean, ultimately, I get more of my day back. So let's start with that. What has waking up early done for you as not only a CEO but as a person?
I think everybody should. You've heard me say before, invest in themselves. And the best time to do that is first thing in the morning. You have zero distractions. You're starting from fresh. And there's something about doing it when it's completely pitch black. And then how, like in life, you can go from the darkest moments to the light. And I think there's a lot of symbolism there. And you just get a lot of alone time. I have a family. I have responsibilities. I have a spouse. They don't get up early. So this is, I think, a cheat code time, because most people won't get up at 5 a.m. For one reason or another. They'll say, oh, I can't wake up that early. I can't go to bed. I used to go to bed, jokingly, as I say, about the same time that I get up now when I was in college. So you could do it. It may mean that you give up Netflix or certain things, but I think it's very necessary to invest in yourself. And the best way to do that is by getting up early. And I mean, it's been proven. I mean, there's so many people that talk about, if you look at some of the most successful people, I don't know any of them. And I'm sure there's a few, and that's usually what's get pointed out. But I would say overwhelmingly, there aren't many that get up past 6 a.m. anyway. So myself usually getting up around 5 in that range, give or take 15 minutes one way or the other, while still getting 7 hours of sleep, at least, if not 7 to 7.5 to 8. Because that's the other thing is a lot of people think I'm going to sleep 4 hours. And I'd tell you, absolutely not. That's, I think, one of the most inaccurate beliefs that people have out there.
How many hours do you get? And then how do you go about putting yourself in a position to be successful with sleeping more than 4 hours while achieving a goal like that?
You just have to, there's plenty of time in the day. Plenty. There's 24 hours for everybody. Let's say you sleep 7 to 8. Let's just go with 8, because let's talk about I also take into consideration that if I don't sleep for 30 minutes throughout the night, because I track my sleep with the Oura Ring, you give yourself that window. So you have 16 hours to accomplish everything that's important and means something to you. That is more than enough time to, read, work out, put in 10 hours, spend time branding yourself online, plenty of family time too. It may just mean that you don't have a lot of Netflix and different things of that nature. However, I don't know how productive that is. To me, spending at least an hour or two every day on Audible and interacting with people, to me, is kind of what Netflix and all those things when I was younger, to fill my time, because that's all you were really doing back then, is people are bored, so they're trying to fill their time. I kind of like the boredom now, the slower time, the time together with all that. I think it's something that I seek. I think it's very discomfortable for most people, but I think that's where the growth occurs.
What about health? Where do you see health? Like, how do you define it? Or as mental fitness, as you've called in the past?
Mm-hmm.
And what's your routine as far as being a healthy CEO, father, husband, and so on and so forth? How do you go?
Yeah, I mean, mental fitness has its three pillars, as I've talked about, but it's just a very simple philosophy, is what I'll say. If you don't feel good, mind, body, and spirit, if you don't feel good, nothing else really matters. Nothing. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how good a looks you have. If you don't have your overwhelming arching health, mental, emotional, physical, what are you going to be? I look forward to one day, it's many, many years down the road, hopefully, where I'm a grandfather. I don't want to be the grandfather that can't play and pick up my kids. I see it all the time when I'm walking around, the poor granddads with damaged up knees, hips, and it's because they didn't take and they didn't strength training. This is all not done. I say this all the time when it comes to taking care of your health. The people that do it just to look good, hey, that's a lot of work. That's way too much work to just try to feel a certain way for an approval from the outside world than instead of from yourself. So there's three pillars, like I said, to it, the mental health, mental wellness, and mental strengthening piece of it. But it's all in an embodiment to just feel the best way that you can from all angles of your life.
Mhm. What time do you exercise, and how long, and what are some of the elements that have made you successful in that? Like, I know you have a trainer, and can you unpack some of that?
Yeah, sure. I'll be seeing him in like about an hour, hour and a half. I like to, when you talk about unpacking it, I like to get up at least 1 to 2 hours before I even go to the gym, because I believe that one of the greatest superpowers out there is some form of silence and meditation. I think it's very, very good to start your day with that, because it's essentially like, if you go to bed and the last 5 minutes you talk like with yourself, you visualize all the things that went well that day, everything that you have a gratitude for, you naturally are going to sleep in a much more positive state. I think in the morning, when you just want to subconsciously get things out of your mind, there's nothing better than just sitting in complete silence. So I do that, and then I go to the gym. I do work out for about an hour with my trainer, who has transformed my health in the last 3 years. And, that's a big piece of it. So usually within the first 2 to 3 hours of every day is about the only time that I get truly to myself, that I like to start the day off, because it really does set you off for, we could use the metaphor, take off like a plane.
If you were giving someone advice that wants to juggle the business and the health in this way, what would you be your advice, how to go about starting an exercise regimen? Let's say they don't even have, they don't yet have that trainer.
Well, the first thing is I would tell you to work out first thing in the morning. That's the first thing I would tell you. Midday, end of the day, I just think you're a little bit too tired. And I know the philosophy, or somebody's going to say or think to themselves, but wait a second, when I wake up, I'm tired. Not if you really did get 7 to 7.5 hours of sleep. You're really not. Now, the first 30 seconds when you get up, are you a little groggy? Well, hell yeah. It's like an engine. You got to get going. It's not going to just start. You're not just going to take off immediately.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of good workouts that you can download online, depending on what your goal is. And I think the goal, just like when I talk about fitness, it's truly fitness. You'll see people say, oh, I go to the gym and I do cardio. Oh, well, that's cool. Or I go to the gym and I lift weights. Oh, that's cool. You have to do, you have to do strength training. So you have to lift weights. Your cardio is better in sprints. So it's more of an interval training, instead of just, because you've seen this before. You can see some marathoners that are overweight, but you never see sprinters that are overweight in any sport. Any sport. The sprinters are always, because there's certain fibers that applies to, and the body just burns a lot more fat when it's challenged, really intense in short intervals over and over and over and over again. I also think, believe it or not, if you tell somebody, To lose weight, you got to run 5 miles, or you can do interval sprints for 1 mile. I actually think interval sprints, even though they're harder, I think people be like, oh man, that's a lot better. And then I would think walking is a really, really, it's kind of a cheat code. A lot of people don't realize is that walking, because you can habit stack when you walk. You can walk, listen to a book, you can walk, take a business call. So you can habit stack. So you can be doing multiple things at once and still be hyper focused on it, because your body will just keep walking, and you'll kind of know your surroundings really well. I think walking is one of the best cardios out there. And I know that sounds weird, but it's very easy to walk for 30, 45 minutes a day. That really burns off a couple hundred calories as well.
Yeah. How long are those sprints?
My interval training, it's usually like an intense 30 seconds to 45 seconds, complete out of breath at the highest speed you can run.
Wow.
And then you go down to walk, then you sprint again, maybe a light jog, but you do interval training. It's not just, and you can do it on a bike. If your knees hurt, you can also do it on a row machine. So there's no excuse, no matter how your body feels, to not be able to do it on one of those 3 machines. I personally like running more. However, I've had to make the switch because of my Achilles to the rower, which I miss running. I always did enjoy it. And I do it here and there, but like anything else, what I always heed advice, I didn't listen to my body for about 15 years on my Achilles hurting, just toughing it out. And unfortunately today I have stenosis, not stenosis. I have tendinosis, where it's tendonitis has gone on for so long that there is some damage to it. But it did get better when I did PRP, and it got it drastically better, but there's no way of reversing it back to what a healthy tendon in your Achilles is for me. So I have to move around that.
What was PRP?
God, I say it wrong. PRP, platelet. Oh my God. Platelet or plasma replacement procedure, something of that nature. But it's basically where you get your own blood, they spin it out, and then they re-inject it into the injured area. You've heard athletes when they say they get their elbow drained or their knee, it's just PRP.
Wow.
So it's very, very good for you. It's how you grow back stem cells. It's very good. It's how your body naturally helps you heal yourself with your own blood. But it helped me tremendously because I then got it in my knee, and now my knee is unbelievable. It's unbelievable how well I feel.
What are some, maybe even earlier into this, when you started this way of living versus the past, because you referenced earlier in the conversation, jokingly, but I'm sure there's some truth into it, going to bed at one point.
There's a lot of truth to it. There's a lot of truth to it. There's no joking. There's a lot of truth to that.
So like going to bed at the time that you wake up now. So let's talk about the beginning of this new way of life, because someone's listening to this thinking, I'd like to go about doing what Eddy's done, but how do I start that way of life early and make it, meaning like stay awake until I have to go to bed at night? Because meaning, are there ways that you can start that way of life where I'll use me as an example in the past, where I'll get up early and then I might fall asleep at some point in the middle of the day and then be up till like 7 a.m. because I wasn't able to stay awake until I should go to bed. So what advice would you have for
All right, so a lot of that
when it comes to this?
Well, first of all, I'd tell you, what's your diet? That's a lot of it right there.
Really?
Too.
Wow. Okay.
I'd tell you, what's your water intake? I'd also tell you, I'm a big proponent of intermittent fasting, especially, it's shown that it's really good for males to be off for 16 hours. So I never drank coffee, by the way, so I'm not this huge coffee advocate, but coffee is it's very good for your liver and everything. It's very good for your body. However, there's a trick to coffee. You have to wait at least an hour, and now I'm even waiting 90 minutes because I heard it's even better from when you wake up. Because how coffee works is, and there's science behind it. I don't want to butcher it, but people can look it up. It's not that the caffeine alerts you, it cuts off some sort of access to something. And if you wait 90, and I'm butchering it completely, but if you wait 90 minutes, at least an hour, but 90 minutes, you're never going to get tired the rest of the day. You don't have that crash, essentially, is what happens. So, you got to be up for a good amount of the day before you do that. There's some people who wake up and rush and go to the coffee, and then you'll see that they're always tired because they have a midday crash. That's why. But yeah, your diet is extremely important. What you're taking in from protein, positive carbs. If you've heard this before, and this is like anything, if you put unbeneficial things in your body, no different than your mind, no different than your spirit, you're going to have unbeneficial results that aren't very positive. It's very.
So would you say a lot of that's
equals,
then the diet, the eating? So
yeah, eating helps. Water helps a lot, especially. That's the big thing is the first 90 minutes before you wake up, you want to say you're going to drink 20 ounces of coffee. I'm just going to throw out a number. You want the first hour, 90 minutes to have 20 ounces of water because you got to go to a net
yeah, you
zero.
missed the zero.
You got to go to zero at that point.
200 ounces of coffee.
Woo! I don't know if that's really good for you at some point.
That might be a bit overkill, huh?
So yeah, the jitters may be high, but yeah, no, I would say is whatever you're going to drink in coffee, drink it in water before. And that's the other part. Drinking water the first thing when you get up is unbelievable for your body because you've been dehydrating your body for 7-8 hours. I don't think you realize that.
Are you saying that you don't get tired then during the day?
Nope.
And even in the beginning of this way of living and leading, you weren't getting tired. It was because it was all
no. This has just been an evolution.
Oh.
No, I had to learn, and I didn't originally start getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning. I started originally getting up at I think my first big breakthrough. I started getting up at like 6.
Do you think there's value in staggering it down over time?
Yeah, it's like anything. It's kind of like when, believe it or not, I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes, pack and a half a day. It's easier to wane down than just to go cold turkey. Same thing I would say with that. It's easier to say, okay, because it's how you set up goals. Okay, I'm going to start getting up at 6 a.m. I don't know. Let's just say 6 months. Let's just say something of that nature. You build that pattern. It becomes a habit. Okay, let me take it to 5:45. Let me take it to 5:30. Let me take it. And when I started it, this journey's been going on for almost 20 years now. When I started it, it's before it was a lot easier too, because I didn't have a family. I didn't have kids. I was in my mid-20s and I was already working. So it's not like I could show up to work at noon. So the workforce also having to be there by, 8 or 9. Plus, mentally, it was easy for me to understand because my parents got up before 6 a.m. my whole life. So I was able to witness that demonstration of leadership and knowledge. So I saw it firsthand.
And what type of work were you doing in your 20s?
Same thing I'm doing today, baby boy. I'm still in the mortgage industry. But back then I was a loan officer. I was a loan originator before I ascended to where.
How do you think you would have been working in this time? And so this is going to go out and, within the next few weeks here. Some have argued that it hasn't been an easy time in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think you would have approached it? What would you be doing, I guess?
Like if I was brand new now into the industry or doing it?
Yeah, if it was like your first year or your first 2, maybe 5 years, how do you think you'd be approaching it?
First 5 years would be tough because, you had such a certain thought how it worked. And then you would have gotten very disrupted at a young age. And that's tough because you haven't had enough mistakes yet to really embrace wisdom and really learn from them. However, this was your first year, couldn't be a better time. What I would do to be 25 again and this be my first year in the industry. I mean, you're going to see a lot of people leave because there was a lot of people that are doing it part-time. You're seeing a lot of morphine going on in the industry. You're seeing an evolution that's good for the consumer. You wouldn't have any bad habits. You'd walk in and be like, oh, this is normal. And then when things got better, you'd be like, I think your fundamentals could get very, very powerful right now. And ironically, when I got in 02, that was kind of the market. I kind of got into a market similar to this one. You know, it was interest rates were around the same size they were, not as many people. And then there was a boom after that. And by the time that the crash did happen, I'd only been in at that point, like when the crash started, because it started in the industry around 07. I'd only been in 5 years. So it's a good point that you bring up earlier. However, at that point, I'd already moved on to being an entrepreneur and starting my own business. So that those lessons teach you, it's kind of like dog years. You learn really fast, really quickly because of all the things that are coming at you differently.
Yeah, knowing what you know today, then how would you be approaching this market? What would be your advice to people listening? Let's start specifically in the business of helping people, achieve the American gift, as it relates to mortgages and so on.
I would tell you to stick to your fundamentals. I'd tell you to stick to fundamentals, because the good thing about chaos is you don't have to be sexy anymore. It's just about blocking and tackling, to use that metaphor. It's all about how many people you making contact with. You may have to make contact with double. How are you putting yourself out there? How have you branded yourself? What are you doing differently to differentiate yourself? I think it's a great time to get very, very well versed. I think you can become what I would say a total package originator in this market. No different than I could say if you're coming from the op side of the angle, because it's always two roads in this industry that really ascend people, as I say, down to the basement, which is executive leadership and entrepreneurship, because I believe in a bottom-up philosophy. I think you can get very, very strong right now in your fundamentals. You don't have to be prepared for, oh, do I have a million products? Do I have this? Oh, this interest rate, this. Like, hate to say it, the pros are what's going to stay, and you can become a pro. You actually can probably slingshot further past if you really dive in, because so many people are just going to be abandoning, and you can just kind of cut to the front of the line.
You seeing that happen?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You think people would benefit from looking at this time as a good time for them?
If they won't listen to a lot of the people in the industry, because all I hear is despair everywhere. I don't know how positive that is. And look, I am a firm believer in realism. However, even the most realistic person, the most objective person, the most optimistic person, I mean, if all you're hearing, the sky's falling, the chicken littles, you'll be like, dude, forget this. These people have mental issues, man. Why do I want to be around these toxic people? What I can say is there's a lot of people that aren't toxic, and it's a lot of people that, yeah, you may have to work twice as hard for half as much, but at some point in time, you'll work half as hard for twice as much. I don't think people understand that philosophy. They want always to work half as hard. And I do think that's one of the challenges out there. I don't think a lot of people work anymore. I really don't. I mean, I think they show up. I think their body is in the presence for 8 to 10 hours a day. But I think a lot of people just really skate through life. I really do. And then they wonder why they're not going anywhere. And it's because it takes a long time, and it's hard. And it's hard because it just doesn't show up. So it's not that it's so difficult to skill. What's hard is keeping the focus for an extremely long period of time, 5, 10, 15 years. However, my my answer, my rebuttal to anybody on that is, well, what else are you going to do at that time? I mean, are you just trying to live your life till death? And if you are, that's fine. Whatever your life goals are, you should accomplish them. If you say, hey, I don't want to put in a lot of time, I want to just spend time with family, that's fine. But what I've found is it's not like those people are really engaged with their children. They may be home, as I always laugh, mowing the yard because it looks like they're home and they're doing something for the family, but they're spending 3 hours not inside, or they're watching movies, or they're just in their presence, but they're not engaging their children, or they're not engaging their spouse. So that's really a facade that you don't want to really work. You don't want to really do anything. You want to just mosey around, and that's completely okay. Just be honest with yourself about it.
Hmm. Yeah. How do you look at presence, and what's been your journey with being more present?
I fell into that trap like everybody else. I thought if I was just around that it was good enough. But what I found, like anything, it's kind of like working out. The metaphor, the analogy I'd use there is, if you show up for 2 hours in the gym, but somehow I've been showing up for 1 hour with a trainer, and my intentional attitude, even how I eat the day before to make sure I have certain carbs depending on what my workout is, so I know in my head, my results have been, so I've spent half the time, but my results have doubled. And it's the same thing of engagement. If you're just moseying around, that doesn't mean you're talking to your kiddos. It doesn't mean you're not asking them the tough questions. And tough questions just say, hey, what's going on with you? Tell me about what you enjoyed about your day. What was your favorite part of your day? It may sound silly, but there's a certain engagement and an interest, a
Hmm.
genuine interest you're showing in other people that will pave a lot of challenges later down the road. I do believe, and I say this all the time, uh, and I say this from my own personal experience and everybody that I always saw, and the obligation parents have to their kids, hugs prevent drugs. I really do believe that. And it's actually, I've said that for years. And then the more I do my journey of reading, I find out about how much oxytocin comes from, spending time, believe it or not, with your dogs, especially dogs in particular. They really are humans' best friend. And I was allergic, so I'm over here. So I'm not knocking any other pets. It's just they really will love you unconditionally, no matter what you do, always. And you need that. And hugging people and that kind of embracement that I grew up, which is very Latino culture based, kisses on the cheek, does create a certain level of oxytocin and serotonin levels, and it does not make you listen to a lot of peer pressure. Like, it just naturally, like, man, I'm not going to let down these people, man, they've been so good to me. There's just a natural, like, almost like defense by playing offense, because a lot
Hmm.
of parents are not affectionate with their children. The number one thing that I've observed out there, and look, I get it, but my father was very brilliant about that when he said, I don't care if you're a teenager, you're never too old to give your dad a hug. You're never too old. And you know what? He was right. And I'm glad, because, he passed away when I was 31. And that would have really sucked if my teen years I didn't give my dad hugs, my mom, because I was too cool for school. That would have really sucked. I don't have that regret. Like, I
Yeah.
don't. I don't have that regret. And you need that affection. That's why even with my guy friends, you do the guy hug. Like, to me, that's important. That embracement's important. I think it's very good in life to do that. So it's with anything. I would tell you that it's how you engage and what you engage, not just here. I mean, even asking them what they want to eat, because we eat at home a decent amount now, but then sometimes even like, hey, even that weird, like, hey, where do I need to stop and get dinner tonight? That weird conversations, oh, here and there, that's a level of engagement, because it's shown when you break bread with people, as they say. It's no different than your own family. It's no different than your friends. It's no different than steamrolling any idea.
Hmm. What's something you want to leave the audience with today?
Wow, something I want to leave the audience with today. Whatever, and people have heard this before. It's cliche, but it's true. Whatever you put your mind to it, It may take a while. You may have some side roads you have to go on. It's not going to be easy, but it's only hard because you have to stay very disciplined and stick with it. And it does work. And once it works, here's the biggest thing, what I want to leave the audience. Don't forget what got you there. So all of a sudden, you don't feel like you've made it. And now I don't need to do it. No, I'd actually tell you that's when you actually have to sacrifice and really dive in even a little bit more. Like, okay, where could I refine it here? Where did I delay my development by an extra? I'm just going to use a number, 2 weeks. Could I have, oh man, could I honed in this? There's always a way to sharpen your skills because it's a very basic. If you're not improving, what else can you be doing? Fill in the blank.